Amoral, cunning, ruthless, and endlessly fascinating, the 48 Laws of Power lands in your hands like a forbidden manual, a whispered confession from history's most brilliant and brutal minds. Imagine sitting in a dimly lit library, the air thick with the dust of centuries, as Niccolò Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, Cleopatra, and P.T. Barnum lean over your shoulder, each offering a hard-won secret. This is not a book about being nice. It is not a guide to ethical leadership or a feel-good seminar on collaboration. It is a cold, clear-eyed anatomy of power as it has actually been practiced across 3,000 years of human civilization, from the courts of ancient China to the backrooms of modern Hollywood. Robert Greene, a classicist by training and a strategist by instinct, spent years distilling the raw material of history, philosophy, and biography into 48 laws that he presents not as moral prescriptions, but as a kind of field guide to the predator-prey dynamics that govern every human hierarchy. The premise is as unsettling as it is compelling. The world is a vast, unending power game, and whether you choose to play or not, you are already on the board. To ignore the rules is to become a pawn. To master them is to write your own destiny. This summary will walk you through the essence of each law, the unforgettable stories that bring them to life, the sharpest criticisms leveled against Greene's vision, and the practical wisdom you can extract without losing your soul. The core thesis of the 48 Laws of Power is that power is a social game, and like any game, it has rules. These rules are not moral judgments, they are observations of what works. Greene argues that we are all engaged in a constant struggle for control, influence, and status, whether we admit it or not. The people who pretend otherwise are either naive or deliberately deceptive. By studying the laws, you can either use them to advance your own position or, just as importantly, recognize when they are being used against you. The book is a weapon, and Greene hands it to you with the implicit understanding that you must wield it responsibly, or at least with your eyes open. The laws are drawn from a staggering array of sources: the strategies of ancient generals, the deceptions of Renaissance courtiers, the manipulations of con artists, the rise and fall of corporate titans. Each law is illustrated with a historical transgression and a historical observance, showing both the cost of violating the law and the reward of following it. The book's voice is that of a worldly advisor, a modern-day Machiavelli, who speaks in imperatives and aphorisms. It is seductive, authoritative, and deliberately provocative. Greene does not ask you to like the laws. He asks you to learn them. The book unfolds as a sequence of 48 chapters, each dedicated to a single law, but they are not isolated tips. They form an interconnected system, a ladder of escalating sophistication. The early laws teach you how to protect yourself and build a foundation. The middle laws show you how to manipulate perception and control the actions of others. The later laws ascend into the grandest strategies of statecraft and psychological domination. Let us walk through them in order, absorbing their substance. Law 1. Never outshine the master. This is the first and most fundamental law because it addresses the most common and fatal mistake, making those above you feel insecure. Everyone has an ego, and those in power need to feel that they are more brilliant, more talented, and more deserving than anyone beneath them. If you display your gifts too openly, you will trigger their envy and fear, and they will find a way to crush you. Instead, make your masters appear more luminous than they are, flatter them, defer to their ideas, and attribute your own successes to their guidance. The story of Nicolas Fouquet, the finance minister to Louis XIV, is the cautionary tale. Fouquet threw a lavish party to showcase his wealth and taste, hoping to impress the king. Instead, Louis felt upstaged and humiliated. He had Fouquet arrested and imprisoned for life. The lesson? Never take your master's spotlight. Let them shine, and you will bask in their reflected glory. Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. Friends are quick to betray because they are prone to envy and they feel entitled to your success. An enemy, once converted, can be more loyal because they have something to prove. Hire a former enemy and they will work tirelessly to earn your trust. But be wary of friends. They will often let you down at the worst moment. The historical example is the betrayal of the Byzantine Emperor Michael III by his friend Basilius, whom he had raised from obscurity. Basilius eventually murdered Michael and seized the throne. The lesson is not to become paranoid, but to recognize that friendship and business are a dangerous mix. Keep your friends for leisure, but in the arena of power, rely on those whose loyalty is based on self-interest and a clear understanding of the stakes. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. Keep people off balance and in the dark by never revealing the purpose behind your actions. If they have no clue what you are after, they cannot prepare a defense. Guide them far enough down the wrong path, envelop them in smoke, and by the time they realize your true goal, it will be too late. The perfect illustration is the Trojan horse. The Greeks, unable to breach Troy's walls, pretended to sail away, leaving behind a giant wooden horse as a supposed offering to the gods. The Trojans, believing the war was over, dragged the horse inside their city. That night, Greek soldiers hidden within emerged and opened the gates. The Trojans were destroyed because they could not see the true intention behind the gift. In daily life, use decoys, false sincerity, and misdirection. Appear to be interested in one thing while secretly pursuing another. Law 4. Always say less than necessary. Powerful people impress and intimidate by saying less. The more you say, the more likely you are to say something foolish. Silence makes people uncomfortable and forces them to fill the void, often revealing their own intentions and weaknesses. When you do speak, your words will carry more weight because they are rare. King Louis XIV then was a master of this. His famous "I shall see" kept his courtiers in a state of constant anxiety and deference. They could never be sure of his opinion, so they worked harder to please him. In negotiations, a well-timed silence can be more powerful than the most eloquent argument. Law 5. So much depends on reputation, guard it with your life. Reputation is the cornerstone of power. With a strong reputation, you can intimidate and win before you even begin. Once it slips, however, you are vulnerable and your enemies will attack from all sides. Make your reputation unassailable. Be alert to potential attacks and thwart them before they happen. Meanwhile, learn to destroy your enemies by opening holes in their own reputations. Then stand aside and let public opinion hang them. The book recounts how the Chinese general Zhuge Liang defended a city with only a few soldiers by opening the gates and sitting on the wall playing his lute, projecting an image of total confidence. The enemy, suspecting a trap, retreated. His reputation for cunning saved the city without a single arrow fired. Law 6. Court attention at all costs. Everything is judged by appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Never let yourself get lost in the crowd. Stand out. Be conspicuous at all cost. Make yourself a magnet of attention by appearing larger, more colorful, more mysterious than the bland and timid masses. P.T. Barnum, the great showman, understood this law perfectly. He created hoaxes and spectacles, like the Fiji Mermaid and General Tom Thumb, that drew enormous crowds. He knew that being talked about, even negatively, was better than being ignored. In your own life, find a way to create an aura of mystery and uniqueness. Associate yourself with the extraordinary. The worst fate is to be forgotten. Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. Use the wisdom, knowledge, and legwork of other people to further your own cause. Not only will such assistance save you valuable time and energy, it will give you a godlike aura of efficiency and speed. In the end, make sure you are the one who gets the credit. The historical model is Nikola Tesla, a brilliant inventor who did the work but allowed others, like Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse, to take the credit and the fortune. Tesla died penniless and obscure, while Edison became a household name. The lesson: never do for yourself what others can do for you. Hire the best minds, use the labor of the past, and then position yourself as the mastermind. Law 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. When you force the other person to act, you are in control. It is always better to make your opponent come to you, abandoning his own plans in the process. Lure him with fabulous gains, then attack. You hold the cards. The example is Napoleon's strategy at the Battle of Austerlitz. He deliberately weakened his right flank, baiting the Russian and Austrian armies to attack. They took the bait, stretched their lines, and Napoleon crushed their center, winning a decisive victory. In negotiations, never appear desperate. Make them come to your table on your terms. Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument. Any momentary triumph you think you have gained through argument is really a Pyrrhic victory. The resentment and ill will you stir up is stronger and lasts longer than any momentary change of opinion. It is much more powerful to get others to agree with you through your actions, without saying a word. Demonstrate, do not explicate. The architect of the Parthenon, Phidias, when accused of stealing gold meant for a statue of Athena, did not argue. He simply removed the gold, weighed it, and proved his innocence. His silent action was more eloquent than any speech. In daily life, when you are right and someone else is wrong, resist the urge to prove it. Let your results speak for you. Law 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. You can die from someone else's misery. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. You may feel you are helping the drowning man, but you are only precipitating your own disaster. The unfortunate sometimes draw a misfortune on themselves. They will also draw it on you. Associate with the happy and the fortunate instead. The story of the conman Yellow Kid Weil illustrates this. He would target wealthy but emotionally troubled individuals, and their misery would cloud their judgment, making them easy marks. But the law also warns that the chronically unlucky can drag you down simply by proximity. Cut them off before they infect you. Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. To maintain your independence, you must always be needed and wanted. The more you are relied on, the more freedom you have. Make people depend on you for their happiness and prosperity, and you have nothing to fear. Never teach them enough so that they can do without you. The classic example is the courtier who makes himself indispensable to the king by being the only one who can decipher the kingdom's finances, or the only one who can calm the king's temper. Once you are irreplaceable, you are safe. Law 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. One sincere and honest move will cover over dozens of dishonest ones. Open-hearted gestures of honesty and generosity bring down the guard of even the most suspicious people. Once your selective honesty opens a hole in their armor, you can deceive and manipulate them at will. A well-timed gift, a Trojan horse, will serve the same purpose. The con artist Victor Lustig, who sold the Eiffel Tower twice, used this law. He posed as a government official and treated his marks with such apparent honesty and concern that they handed over enormous bribes without suspicion. Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. If you need to turn to an ally for help, do not bother to remind him of your past assistance and good deeds. He will find a way to ignore you. Instead, uncover something in your request or in your alliance with him that will benefit him and emphasize it out of all proportion. He will respond enthusiastically when he sees some best thing to be gained for himself. The book recounts how the Greek hero Jason, seeking the golden fleece, appealed to the self-interest of the Argonauts by promising them glory and riches, not by begging for their help. Law 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. Knowing about your rival is critical. Use spies to gather valuable information that will keep you a step ahead. Better still, play the spy yourself. In polite social encounters, learn to probe. Ask indirect questions to get people to reveal their weaknesses and intentions. There is no occasion that is not an opportunity for artful spying. Talleyrand, the French diplomat, was a master of this. He would appear to be a sympathetic listener, drawing out secrets from everyone he met, which he then used to advise Napoleon and later to navigate the Congress of Vienna. Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. All great leaders since Moses have known that a feared enemy must be crushed completely. If one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. More is lost through stopping halfway than through total annihilation. The enemy will recover and will seek revenge. Crush him, not only in body but in spirit. The Athenians' treatment of the island of Melos during the Peloponnesian War is the brutal example. When Melos refused to surrender, Athens killed all the men and enslaved the women and children. The lesson is harsh. In the game of power, half measures invite retaliation. Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Too much circulation makes the price go down. The more you are seen and heard from, the more common you appear. If you are already established in a group, temporary withdrawal will make you more talked about, even more admired. You must learn when to leave, create value through scarcity. The courtesan Ninon de l'Enclos would periodically withdraw from Parisian society, and her absence only made her admirers more desperate for her return. In modern terms, make yourself less available and your stock will rise. Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror, cultivate an air of unpredictability. Humans are creatures of habit with an insatiable need to see familiarity in the actions of others. If you are predictable, you give others a sense of control. Turn the tables. Be deliberately unpredictable. Behavior that seems to have no consistency or purpose will keep them off balance, and they will wear themselves out trying to explain your moves. Taken to an extreme, this strategy can intimidate and terrorize. The chess champion Bobby Fischer used this law by making bizarre demands and behaving erratically before his match with Boris Spassky, unsettling his opponent and gaining a psychological edge. Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. The world is dangerous and enemies are everywhere. Everyone has to protect themselves. A fortress seems the safest, but isolation exposes you to more dangers than it protects you from. It cuts you off from valuable information. It makes you conspicuous and an easy target. Better to circulate among people, find allies, mingle. You are shielded from your enemies by the crowd. The Chinese emperor Qin Shi Huangtai, who built the Great Wall and isolated himself in his palace, became paranoid and was eventually betrayed by his own courtiers. Power requires human contact. Law 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. There are many different kinds of people in the world, and you can never assume that everyone will react to your strategies in the same way. Deceive or outmaneuver some people, and they will spend the rest of their lives seeking revenge. They are wolves in sheep's clothing. Choose your victims and opponents carefully. Then, never offend or deceive the wrong person. The book warns of the 5 dangerous types: the arrogant and proud, the hopelessly insecure, the suspicious, the serpent with a long memory, and the plain stupid. Offending any of these can be fatal. Law 20. Do not commit to anyone. It is the fool who always rushes to take sides. Do not commit to any side or cause but yourself. By maintaining your independence, you become the master of others, playing people against one another, making them pursue you. The example is Queen Elizabeth III of England, who for decades refused to marry, keeping suitors from various nations dangling. This allowed her to maintain a balance of power in Europe and avoid being subsumed by any one faction. Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. No one likes feeling stupider than the next person. The trick, then, is to make your victims feel smart, and not just smart, but smarter than you are. Once convinced of this, they will never suspect that you may have ulterior motives. The conman Joseph Weil, known as the Yellow Kid, would often play the part of a naive, bumbling investor to lure his marks into a false sense of superiority, making them easy to fleece. Law 22. Use the surrender tactic, transform weakness into power. When you are weaker, never fight for honor's sake. Instead, surrender. Surrender gives you time to recover, time to wait for his power to wane, time to torment and irritate the victor. Do not give him the satisfaction of fighting and defeating you. Surrender first. By yielding, you turn the other's aggression against himself. The story of the Melians, who refused to surrender to Athens and were annihilated, is contrasted with those who surrendered and lived to fight another day. In personal conflicts, surrendering can disarm your opponent and buy you time. Law 23. Concentrate your forces. Conserve your forces and energies by keeping them concentrated at their strongest point. You gain more by finding a rich mine and mining it deeper than by flitting from one shallow mine to another. Intensity defeats extensity every time. When looking for sources of power to elevate you, find the one key patron, the fat cow, who will give you milk for a long time to come. The Rothschild banking family concentrated their efforts on a few key clients and governments rather than spreading themselves thin, and built an empire. Law 24. Play the perfect courtier. The perfect courtier thrives in a world where everything revolves around power and political dexterity. He has mastered the art of indirection. He flatters, yields to superiors, and asserts power over others in the most oblique and graceful manner. Learn and apply the laws of courtiership, and you will rise to the height of power. This law is a mini manual within the book, detailing the specific skills of the courtier. Avoid ostentation, practice nonchalance, be frugal with flattery, adapt your style to the audience, and never be the bearer of bad news. The Renaissance writer Baldassare de Castiglione's The Book of the Courtier is the source text, and Greene distills its wisdom for the modern age. Law 25. Recreate yourself. Do not accept the roles that society foists on you. Recreate yourself by forging a new identity, one that commands attention and never bores the audience. Be the master of your own image rather than letting others define it for you. Incorporate dramatic devices into your public gestures and actions. Your power will be enhanced and your character will seem larger than life. Julius Caesar understood this. He carefully crafted his public image as a man of the people, a military genius, and a divine figure, using spectacle and symbolism to cement his legend. Law 26. Keep your hands clean. You must seem a paragon of civility and efficiency. Your hands are never soiled by mistakes and nasty deeds. Maintain such a spotless appearance by using others as scapegoats to disguise your involvement. Use a cat's paw, someone who does your dirty work for you, so that your reputation remains pristine. The example is the Borgia family. Cesare Borgia used his lieutenant Ramiro de Orco to carry out brutal pacification of the Romagna, then had him publicly executed to distance himself from the cruelty and appear as the people's savior. Law 27. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. People have an overwhelming desire to believe in something. Become the focal point of such desire by offering them a cause, a new faith to follow. Keep your words vague but full of promise. Emphasize enthusiasm over rationality and clear thinking. Give your new disciples rituals to perform. Ask them to make sacrifices on your behalf. In the absence of organized religion and grand causes, your new belief system will bring you untold power. The book examines how con artists like Gregor McGregor, who invented a fictional Central American country and sold land and bonds to eager investors, exploited this need. More benignly, leaders from Gandhi to Steve Jobs created cult-like devotion by offering a compelling vision. Law 28. Enter action with boldness. If you are unsure of a course of action, do not attempt it. Your doubts and hesitations will infect your execution. Timidity is dangerous. Better to enter with boldness. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. Everyone admires the bold. No one honors the timid. The story of the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés illustrates this. When he landed in Mexico, he burned his ships, eliminating any possibility of retreat. His men had no choice but to fight with total commitment, and they conquered an empire. Law 29. Plan all the way to the end. The ending is everything. Plan all the way to it, taking into account all the possible consequences, obstacles, and twists of fortune that might reverse your hard work and give the glory to others. By planning to the end, you will not be overwhelmed by circumstances, and you will know when to stop. Gently guide fortune and help determine the future by thinking far ahead. The book recounts how the great chess champion José Raúl Capablanca would visualize the entire game from the opening move, seeing the end before it began. In life, most people are so consumed by the present that they fail to see the traps ahead. Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Your actions must seem natural and executed with ease. All the toil and practice that go into them, and also all the clever tricks, must be concealed. When you act effortlessly, as if you could do much more. Avoid the temptation of revealing how hard you work. It only raises questions. The Japanese tea ceremony. Master Sen no Rikyu taught that the highest art conceals art. The performer who makes a difficult task look easy gains an aura of genius, while the one who visibly struggles loses respect. Law 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. The best deceptions are the ones that seem to give the other person a choice. Your victims feel they are in control, but they are actually your puppets. Give people options that come out in your favor, whichever one they choose. Force them to make choices between the lesser of two evils, both of which serve your purpose. Henry Kissinger, as Secretary of State, would present President Nixon with 3 options, 2 of which were extreme and unpalatable, guiding him to choose the one Kissinger wanted. The illusion of choice is a powerful tool. Law 32. Play to people's fantasies. The truth is often avoided because it is ugly and unpleasant. Never appeal to truth and reality unless you are prepared for the anger that comes from disenchantment. Life is so harsh and distressing that people who can manufacture romance or conjure up fantasy are like oases in the desert. Everyone flocks to them. There is great power in tapping into the fantasies of the masses. The story of the alchemist who promised to turn lead into gold and was lavishly supported by princes despite never succeeding shows how fantasy can override reason. Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Everyone has a weakness, a gap in the castle wall. That weakness is usually an insecurity, an uncontrollable emotion, or need. It can also be a small secret pleasure. Either way, once found, it is a thumbscrew you can turn to your advantage. The book details how the French diplomat Talleyrand would study a person's vices and secret desires, then use that knowledge to manipulate them. Find the one thing that your target cannot resist, and you hold the key. Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. The way you carry yourself will often determine how you are treated. In the long run, appearing vulgar or common will make people disrespect you. For a king respects himself and inspires the same sentiment in others. By acting regally and confident of your powers, you make yourself seem destined to wear a crown. Christopher Columbus, despite his humble origins, carried himself with such dignity and certainty that he convinced the Spanish monarchs to fund his voyage. Self-belief is contagious. Law 35. Master the art of timing. Never seem to be in a hurry. Hurrying betrays a lack of control over yourself and over time. Always seem patient, as if you know that everything will come to you eventually. Become a detective of the moment. Sniff out the spirit of the times, the trends that will carry you to power. Learn to stand back when the time is not yet ripe, and to strike fiercely when it has reached fruition. The book examines how the French revolutionary Joseph Fouché survived the Reign of Terror, the Directory, Napoleon, and the Restoration by always sensing the shifting winds and aligning himself with the rising power at exactly the right moment. Law 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. By acknowledging a petty problem, you give it existence and credibility. The more attention you pay an enemy, the stronger you make him, and a small mistake is often made worse and more visible when you try to fix it. It is sometimes best to leave things alone. If there is something you want but cannot have, show contempt for it. The less interest you show, the more superior you seem. The example is the ancient Greek philosopher who, when insulted, simply laughed and walked away, robbing the insulter of his power. Law 37. Create compelling spectacles. Striking imagery and grand symbolic gestures create the aura of power. Everyone responds to them. Stage spectacles for those around you, full of arresting visuals and radiant symbols that heighten your presence. Dazzled by appearances, no one will notice what you are really doing. The Roman emperors understood this, staging lavish games and triumphs to distract the populace from political realities. In modern times, a well-orchestrated product launch or a dramatic public gesture can capture the imagination and cement your influence. Law 38, think as you like but behave like others. If you make a show of going against the times, flaunting your unconventional ideas and unorthodox ways, people will think that you only want attention and that you look down upon them. They will find a way to punish you for making them feel inferior. It is far safer to blend in and nurture the common touch. Share your originality only with tolerant friends and those who are sure to appreciate your uniqueness. The philosopher Socrates was executed partly because his constant questioning and refusal to conform offended the Athenian public. Discretion is the better part of valor. Law 39, stir up waters to catch fish. Anger and emotion are strategically counterproductive. You must always stay calm and objective. But if you can make your enemies angry while staying calm yourself, you gain a decided advantage. Put your enemies off balance. Find the chink in their vanity through which you can rattle them, and you hold the strings. The Japanese samurai Miyamoto Musashi, in his duels, would deliberately arrive late or insult his opponents to enrage them, causing them to make fatal mistakes. Law 40. Despise the free lunch. What is offered for free is dangerous. It usually involves either a trick or a hidden obligation. What is worth paying for. By paying your own way, you stay clear of gratitude, guilt, and deceit. It is also often wise to pay the full price. There is no cutting corners with excellence. Be lavish with your money and circulate it generously. Money may determine your power for now, but it is not the only factor. Generosity softens people up and creates opportunities. The book warns of the free lunch that comes with strings attached, like the gifts of the Medici that turned recipients into dependents. Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. What happens first always appears better and more original than what comes after. If you succeed a great man or have a famous parent, you will have to accomplish double their achievements to outshine them. Do not get lost in their shadow or stuck in a past not of your own making. Establish your own name and identity by changing course. Alexander the Great, son of Philip II, did not try to simply continue his father's conquests. He forged his own legend by conquering the Persian Empire and reaching India. Carve your own path. Law 42, strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Trouble in a group often can be traced to a single individual, the stirrer of the pot, the arrogant underling who poisons the well. If you allow such people room to operate, others will succumb to their influence. Do not wait for the troubles they cause to multiply. Do not try to negotiate with them. They are irredeemable. Neutralize their influence by isolating or banishing them. Strike at the source of the trouble and the sheep will scatter. The book cites the example of how a single disgruntled employee can spread dissent. Fire that person and the rest fall back in line. Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. Coercion creates a reaction that will eventually work against you. You must seduce others into wanting to move in your direction. A person you have seduced becomes a loyal pawn, and the way to seduce others is to operate on their individual psychologies and weaknesses. Soften up the resistant by working on their emotions, playing on what they hold dear and what they fear. Ignore the hearts and minds of others, and they will grow to hate you. The contrast is between the brutal dictator who rules by fear and the charismatic leader who inspires love. The latter builds a more durable power base. Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. The mirror reflects reality, but it is also the perfect tool for deception. When you mirror your enemies, doing exactly as they do, they cannot figure out your strategy. The mirror effect mocks and humiliates them, making them overreact. By holding up a mirror to their psyches, you seduce them with the illusion that you share their values. By holding up a mirror to their actions, you teach them a lesson. The story of the painter Apelles, who mirrored the criticisms of a rival artist by incorporating them into his work and thus exposing the rival's envy, shows the power of this technique. In modern psychology, mirroring body language builds rapport, but Greene's version is more strategic and confrontational. Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. Everyone understands the need for change in the abstract, but on the day-to-day level, people are creatures of habit. Too much innovation is traumatic and will lead to revolt. If you are new to a position of power or an outsider trying to build a power base, make a show of respecting the old way of doing things. If change is necessary, make it feel like a gentle improvement on the past. The Chinese Emperor Wang Mang tried to implement radical reforms too quickly and was overthrown. Gradual change, disguised as tradition, is the safer path. Law 46. Never appear too perfect. Appearing better than others is always dangerous, but most dangerous of all is to appear to have no faults or weaknesses. envy creates silent enemies. It is smart to occasionally display defects and admit to harmless vices in order to deflect envy and appear more human and approachable. Only gods and the dead can seem perfect with impunity. The book tells of how the French king Louis Philippe cultivated a bourgeois, umbrella-carrying image to appear as a citizen king, diffusing the envy that had toppled his predecessors. Law 47, do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. The moment of victory is often the moment of greatest peril. In the heat of victory, arrogance and overconfidence can push you past the goal you had aimed for, and by going too far, you make more enemies than you defeat. Do not allow success to go to your head. There is no substitute for strategy and careful planning. Set a goal, and when you reach it, stop. The example is the ancient Persian king Cyrus the Great, who, after a string of victories, recklessly attacked the Massagetid and was killed. Know when to consolidate your gains. Law 48. Assume formlessness. By taking a shape, by having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack. Instead of taking a form for your enemy to grasp, keep yourself adaptable and on the move. Accept the fact that nothing is certain and no law is fixed. The best way to protect yourself is to be as fluid and formless as water. Do not bet on stability or lasting order. Everything changes. The book concludes with the metaphor of water, which adapts to any container, wears down rock, and cannot be grasped. The ultimate power is the ability to flow, to abandon rigid identities, and to respond to circumstances with total flexibility. This law echoes the ancient Taoist wisdom of Sun Tzu and the strategic philosophy of the guerrilla fighter. These 48 laws, taken together, form a comprehensive system. But the book is not merely a list of aphorisms. It is a treasury of stories. The historical examples are what make the laws unforgettable, transforming abstract advice into vivid, cautionary, and often chilling narratives. Let us dwell on a few of the most memorable tales that Greene uses to drive his points home. The story of Nicolas Fouquet and Louis XIV, which illustrates Law 1, is a masterpiece of psychological insight. Fouquet was the brilliant and ambitious finance minister to the young Sun King. In 1661, he threw a spectacular party at his newly completed chateau, Vaux-le-Vicomte, to honor the king. The gardens were designed by Lenotre, the interiors by Lebrun, and the entertainment included a new play by Molière. It was the most dazzling event France had ever seen. Fouquet's intention was to impress the king and secure his position as prime minister. But Louis XIV, proud and insecure, saw the party not as a tribute, but as a humiliating comparison. Fouquet had outshone him. That night, the king wanted to have Fouquet arrested, but was restrained by his mother. Instead, he bided his time. A few weeks later, he had Fouquet arrested on trumped-up charges of embezzlement. Fouquet spent the rest of his life in prison. The chateau's very magnificence was used as evidence against him. The lesson is brutal. Never make your master feel inferior. Your talents must be used to enhance your master's glory, not your own. Another unforgettable story is that of the Trojan horse used for Law 3. Conceal your intentions. For 10 years, the Greeks had besieged Troy and failed. Odysseus devised a plan. They built a giant wooden horse, hid their best warriors inside, and left it on the beach as an offering to Athena, while the rest of the army pretended to sail away. The Trojans, despite warnings, dragged the horse into the city as a trophy. That night, the Greeks emerged, opened the gates, and slaughtered the Trojans. The story is the ultimate parable of deception. The Trojans saw only the surface, a gift, a peace offering, and failed to see the hidden danger. Greene uses it to teach that you must always look beyond the apparent motive. In your own life, when someone offers you a gift or a favor, ask yourself, what is the hidden intention? And when you act, wrap your true goals in a cloak of innocence. The rise and fall of Cesare Borgia, used in Law 26, Keep Your Hands Clean, is a study in the ruthless use of a scapegoat. Cesare Borgia, the son of Pope Alexander VI, was a brilliant and brutal prince who sought to unify Italy under his rule. When he conquered the region of Romagna, it was lawless and chaotic. He appointed his cruel lieutenant, Ramiro de Orco, to pacify it. De Orco used terror and executions to restore order, but in doing so, he became hated by the people. Once the region was subdued, Cesare had De Orco publicly executed and his body displayed in the town square, cut in half. The people were shocked but also grateful. They saw Cesare as the just ruler who had punished the tyrant. Cesare had used De Orco to do the dirty work, then disposed of him to keep his own hands clean and to win the people's love. The lesson is that power often requires unpleasant actions, but you must never be seen as the perpetrator. Find a cat's paw and then, if necessary, sacrifice it. The story of the Yellow Kid Weil, the legendary con man, appears in several laws, including Law 21, Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Weil's cons were elaborate and psychological. In one famous scheme, he posed as a wealthy investor who was slightly dim and needed help closing a deal. He would approach a mark, often a successful but greedy businessman, and offer him a chance to make a huge profit by simply acting as a middleman. Weil would play the part of the naive, bumbling rich man, making the mark feel superior and in control. The mark, convinced he was taking advantage of a fool, would put up his own money, only to find that Weil and the money had vanished. The genius of the con was that the mark's own greed and sense of superiority blinded him to the trap. Greene uses this to show that appearing weaker or stupider than you are is a powerful form of deception. The book also draws on the wisdom of the courtiers of the Renaissance, particularly through the figure of Baldassare Castiglione, whose Book of the Courtier is the basis for Law 24, Play the Perfect Courtier. Castiglione's ideal courtier was a master of grace, wit, and indirection. He knew how to flatter without being obvious, how to advise without offending, and how to excel without arousing envy. Greene distills this into practical advice: be a source of pleasure, never bring bad news, and always make your master look good. The courtier's power is the power of influence, not force, and it is perhaps the most relevant model for navigating modern office politics. These stories, and dozens more, are the lifeblood of the book. They make the laws tangible and memorable, but they also reveal the book's dark heart. History is a graveyard of those who failed to understand power, and a hall of fame for those who mastered it, often through deception, cruelty, and manipulation. Given the book's unflinching amorality, it has attracted a firestorm of criticism and debate. The counter-arguments and critiques are as important to understand as the laws themselves, because they reveal the limitations and dangers of Greene's philosophy. The most common criticism is that the book is a manual for sociopaths. It seems to endorse manipulation, deceit, and the ruthless pursuit of self-interest at the expense of others. Many readers find its tone cynical and its advice morally repugnant. The laws, if taken literally and applied without conscience, can destroy relationships, create a toxic work environment, and lead to a life of paranoia and isolation. The book's defenders argue that Greene is merely describing how power works, not prescribing how you should behave. He is like a zoologist documenting the behavior of predators. You can use the knowledge to avoid being eaten. But the line between description and endorsement is blurry, and the book's seductive, imperative voice often feels like a call to action. Another critique is that the laws are contradictory. For example, Law 4 says, always say less than necessary, while Law 6 says, court attention at all costs. Law 20 says, do not commit to anyone. But Law 11 says, learn to keep people dependent on you, which requires a form of commitment. Law 38 says, think as you like but behave like others, while Law 25 says, recreate yourself. Greene would argue that these are not contradictions but situational tools. The art of power is knowing which law to apply in which context, but the book offers little guidance on how to make those judgments, leaving the reader with a toolbox full of potentially conflicting instruments. The book's reliance on historical anecdotes has also been questioned. Critics argue that Greene cherry-picks stories to fit his laws, ignoring counterexamples and the complexity of historical causation. The story of Fouquet, for instance, is more nuanced. Fouquet's downfall was also due to his political enemies and the king's desire to centralize power. Reducing it to a single law oversimplifies history. Moreover, many of the examples come from pre-modern autocratic societies where power was zero-sum and life was cheap. Applying these lessons directly to modern democratic or corporate environments where collaboration and transparency are often valued can be disastrous. A manager who follows Law 1 and never outshines the boss might be seen as lacking initiative. A leader who follows Law 15 and crushes enemies totally might face lawsuits and public backlash. The book has also been criticized for its gender bias. The vast majority of the historical figures are men, and the few women who appear are often courtesans or seductresses, reinforcing stereotypes. The laws themselves are framed in a masculine, competitive language that may not resonate with or be applicable to everyone. Power dynamics can be different across genders, and the book largely ignores these nuances. Furthermore, some argue that the book promotes a paranoid, zero-sum worldview that is ultimately self-defeating. If everyone around you is a potential enemy, you will never experience genuine trust, intimacy, or collaboration. The constant vigilance and manipulation required by the laws can be exhausting and alienating. In the long run, a reputation for honesty and integrity may be a more sustainable source of power than the Machiavellian tactics Greene describes. Research in organizational psychology suggests that pro-social behavior and trust building are often more effective for long-term success than manipulation. Finally, there is the ethical question. Even if the laws are effective, is it right to use them? The book's amoral stance leaves this entirely up to the reader. It provides no ethical framework, no distinction between just and unjust uses of power. This can be liberating for some, but deeply troubling for others. It places the burden of morality entirely on the individual, and history shows that power without ethics leads to atrocity. Despite these criticisms, the book remains a bestseller because it speaks to a truth that many people feel, but few articulate. The world is not always fair, and those who ignore the darker aspects of human nature do so at their peril. The practical takeaways, then, are not about becoming a ruthless manipulator, but about developing a more realistic and strategic understanding of power so that you can protect yourself and achieve your goals without losing your integrity. The first practical takeaway is to become a keen observer of power dynamics. Start by simply noticing the laws in action around you. See how your boss reacts when a subordinate takes too much credit. Watch how a colleague uses selective honesty to gain trust. Observe how a competitor's reputation is attacked. By recognizing these patterns, you can avoid being a victim. You do not have to use the laws offensively, but you must understand them defensively. Knowledge is your shield. Second, learn to control your emotions. Many of the laws, such as Law 39, stir up waters to catch fish, depend on provoking an emotional reaction. If you can remain calm and rational while others are losing their heads, you gain an enormous advantage. Practice detachment. When you feel anger, envy, or insecurity rising, pause and analyze the situation. Ask yourself, who benefits from my emotional state? What is the strategic move here? Emotional mastery is the foundation of power. Third, cultivate a strong but flexible sense of self. Law 25, recreate yourself. And Law 48, assume formlessness. Both point to the importance of not being rigidly attached to a single identity. You can be a different person in different contexts without being fake. This is about adaptability. In a job interview, you present one facet. With close friends, another. The key is to be intentional about the image you project rather than letting others define you. At the same time, maintain a core of integrity that guides your choices. You can play the game without becoming the game. Fourth, build and guard your reputation as your most valuable asset. In the age of social media, Law 5 is more relevant than ever. A single misstep can destroy years of goodwill. Be mindful of what you post, what you say, and how you are perceived. At the same time, do not be afraid to court attention strategically. Find your unique angle, your personal brand, and promote it consistently. But remember Law 46. Never appear too perfect. A little vulnerability can make you more relatable and deflect envy. Fifth, master the art of indirect influence. Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others is perhaps the most ethically palatable and effective law. Instead of coercing people, learn to understand their desires, fears, and motivations. Frame your requests in terms of their self-interest, as Law 13 advises. Listen more than you speak, and use Law 4's principle of saying less than necessary to draw others out. When you need to persuade, tell stories, and create spectacles, as Law 37 suggests, rather than relying on dry arguments. People are moved by emotion and imagery, not logic. Sixth, be strategic about your relationships. Law 2 warns against trusting friends too much, but that does not mean you should have no friends. It means you should be clear-eyed about the limits of friendship in professional and competitive contexts. Keep your personal and professional lives somewhat separate. When you do need allies, look for people whose interests align with yours, and be generous in ways that create mutual benefit. Law 40's advice to despise the free lunch is sound. Pay your debts, both financial and social, and avoid becoming entangled in hidden obligations. Seventh, know when to stop. Law 47 is a crucial check on ambition. In victory, it is tempting to push for more, but overreach can undo everything. Set clear goals, and when you achieve them, pause and consolidate. This applies to negotiations, career moves, and even personal conflicts. Sometimes the wisest move is to walk away and let your success speak for itself. Finally, use the laws as a mirror for self-examination. When you read a law that makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself why. Is it because you recognize a tendency in yourself that you need to control? Or because you have been a victim of that law in the past? The book can be a tool for personal growth if you approach it with self-awareness. It can help you identify your own vulnerabilities, your need for approval, your tendency to argue, your habit of isolation, and correct them. The final verdict on the 48 Laws of Power is that it is a masterwork of strategic thinking, a dark mirror held up to human nature, and a book that demands to be read with both fascination and caution. It is not a book to be followed blindly, nor is it a book to be dismissed out of hand. It is a book to be studied, debated, and internalized selectively. Robert Greene has done something remarkable. He has synthesized 3,000 years of power dynamics into a single, compelling, and deeply unsettling volume. The laws are real. They operate in boardrooms, in political campaigns, in social cliques, and in family dynamics. To pretend otherwise is to be willfully naive. But the laws are not destiny. You can choose which ones to apply, and you can choose to use your understanding of power to create more ethical, collaborative, and just outcomes. The book's greatest gift is not a set of manipulative tricks, but a heightened awareness of the game being played around you. Once you see the board, you can decide how to move. Read it, learn from it, but do not let it turn you into a monster. The ultimate power is the power to